All right, everyone, welcome back from our short break. It took a little bit longer than expected, but it is definitely worth it. And we are in for a really exciting time. So, in this part, I am going to start by answering some of the phenomenal questions that you have asked me. Now, when it comes to career, right, and career conversations for females or women, it's a very broad topic and it's not something that you really exhaust in one day. Also, a number of us have questions that need genuine answer. So, depending on the phase you are at in your career, you would have a question, and at another point, maybe 2 months from then, you could be in another webinar and someone is in that phase or at that phase. But also, something I learned last year, a lot of people had career troubles, especially within the first quarter of 2025. But being in the right community helped. Having godly counsel and wisdom to really understand what's happening to you in that phase is important. Sometimes tests look like things that make us feel like quitting because they're just difficult, right? Difficult, difficult, difficult. But even when it comes to living, there's a way to live. So you don't want to make permanent decisions on temporary issues. I have grouped today's questions, or I have segmented today's questions, and I will be answering questions that are questions. Some of the things that came in the forms were comments. Some of them were just too vague, and I can't really answer the vagueness. But regardless of what question you ask, you're going to get wisdom and value from today's session. The first question I have decided to answer today is this question. It says, how to channel your energy into one's career path. And seeing this question, I was like, channeling energy. And at another point, I was like, yeah, maybe that's not what the person is trying to say, but let's try to put clarity into it, so or context into it. In the wrong direction and expect the right result. So this question is really a question about clarity. And to properly answer the question around what am I supposed to do? Where do I put my energy? How do I know that this thing is going to work? You first need to answer answers for yourself so that you don't end up putting your energy in the wrong career field and you're wondering why the results that you need, you're not seeing it. So this is more about clarity, direction. And later on, I will share some practical steps and tips to fully find your identity. That's why you find out that most impactful mentorship programs are about 3 months long. So you could start by introspecting, you could start by asking questions, you could start by reflecting on the hobbies and things you like, you could start by taking personality test and survey. But if you spend time and you invest time on the first place or on the first post where you see a wig, after a while you will notice that more wigs will begin to pop up on your feed. It's not coincidence. It's just the explanation of that quote that the teacher shows up. So if there are really, really deep questions in your heart about identity, getting the right answer or getting the wrong answer, I'm going to answer another question that is also similar to this one, and just to provide context on what I'm trying to communicate about identity. I think I'm just going to stick to the audio here. Or growing the right way in your career, you're not necessarily losing that. However, like I said in answering the previous question, the first one is really about your identity. And when it is about identity, the question is really, who does God say I am? Not who do I think I am? Not who do people say I am? I remember when I started working in a particular job, I got a new role some years back, and I was working in a new department, in a new office location, and they had us make a presentation about ourselves. And in making that presentation, they said, "Oh, make a presentation about yourself." And in my presentation slide about myself, I was saying, "Oh, this is what people say about me. This is what people call me." And at the end of the presentation, it was just like, "So exactly, who exactly are you, Tolu? Tell us who you are, not what people say." So at that point in my life, I was so hot, right? And what people had said about me, the definition that people had poured on me, was how I saw myself, that I lost a sense of my self-worth. So you need to really know who you are. To understand who you are, you have to go to the person who made you to really pour and explain who you are to you. If I make a chair, you can still use it as a table. It would be slightly uncomfortable, but that's not the purpose for which I created that chair. I created it as a chair. So I the maker, I the creator of the chair, I have to tell the users using it that this is what I created this thing for. So this is this. And if you're a young woman struggling with identity and trying to answer this question, towards the end, I will share a very practical resource that will help you answer this, right? You will have to do the work as well, but it provides really practical guide that you can use, and within 3 months. The next thing is to start. And starting means having a vision. I like to think of a vision as an image of the end result, an image of what will be achieved, an image of what can be achieved, an image of what should be achieved, an image of what the outcome will look like. That's the vision. And it's that vision that you keep in front of you. It's that vision that you keep before you, and it's that vision that you run with. However, within the context of your vision, you now begin to have smaller assignments. So when, for example, you work in a company, you've maybe built the relationship, you've gotten the things that you need for the next level of the vision, right, that serves the purpose, it becomes easier for you to resign. So you're not feeling bad when you have to make hard decisions are being made in the right context. You know that this thing is a job, but it's also a means to an end. This role is an opportunity, but it's also a means to an end. So the way people are frustrated about certain things, you're not necessarily frustrated about those things. And the final, okay, the second to last point I'm going to give here is really to trust the process. And by trusting the process is to trust God, because sometimes what you ordered, the vision that you downloaded, is not necessarily going to look like what you see. And when it comes to succeeding in your career, the easiest way to do it is with God. What does that mean? It means going, you know what career I'm going to succeed at. So tell me, what career am I going to succeed at? When he has told you, okay, what step do I need to take? And then move. But sometimes we get caught up in analysis paralysis, where we're like, God, tell me everything. Like I explained how we started GWDO Oracle Bethel, right? We're just like, I want God to tell me everything. I want to show me everything. And when it comes to working God in your career, it is the purpose, the identity that is linked or tied or assigned that is tied to your calling or to what God wants you to do in your career. There is no reference point for it. And this is why your identity is something you have to be really stable and secure in. Do you ever sit down and think about, for example, Marie Curie, right, who won Nobel Peace Prize? Do you ever think of what that was like for her? Not having a woman who had done it before, not even, you know, at the time knowing that, okay, this thing was done or this thing could be done. It means that there were many things she did that were she did that were misinterpreted. It means that there were many things that she did that were taken out of context. It means that when certain women were doing certain things and maybe buying animals and having pets, she was probably mocked for spending more time in the physics lab and being told that men always win the Nobel Peace Prize. You're very delulu for doing this thing. So but towards the end, like I mentioned, I would share a practical resource, and I would also share some next steps that would help you prepare and really hone your identity, because you really have to be secured. Sometimes because God said does not always mean it's going to be easy. So because it's easy, there are multiple results, it looks lucrative, it looks beautiful, it does not necessarily mean that God is in it. And that is why your identity, who says you are, is most important, right? I'm going to share a practical story about, dealing with identity. In 2024, God began to speak to me about writing about youth development in 2025. So in 2024, I prayed about, in fact, the first month practically, I went to talk to God about it. And after talking to God about it, I was afraid. In fact, instead of praying, I ended up crying for almost 1 hour. I was telling God, God, do you know how many followers I have on LinkedIn? I said, God, the people that are following me on LinkedIn, half of them are not even engaging on my post. You're not telling me that I should shift what I'm doing and go and do something else. What if they don't like it? What if they go? So this was me dealing with still a part of people pleasing. And that's why as you begin to hear these stories and things, you realize it's a constant journey, right? Of trusting the process, of trusting God and extending grace to yourself. Now, the second time I went to talk to God about it, I cried, right? But this time I wrote down some ideas. The third time I went to talk to God about, after talking to God about it, I opened Canva and I designed about 3 carousels. And I remember writing one article and saying I'll write another article. And I did not know what exactly I was going to write about in terms of youth development. I was experiencing writer's block. I did not think there was anything I knew I could write about it. But as 2025 started, God began to tell me to write about different things, youth tokenism, youth networks, and it began to make sense. Now, from writing those articles, it got to a month that with highlights on specific years and what we need to do to prepare ahead of the changes that were coming. And that blew my mind. So somebody would say, oh wow, this person has done this. It didn't happen by chance. It happened by constantly putting in the work, constantly trusting God, and trying to be secure in my identity. So if I did not start, imagine I never wrote the first article. The remaining more than 10 articles I wrote about youth leadership and development probably would never have been published. And if those were not published, I probably wouldn't have grown to the point where I got the instruction to start the Grow with the Oracle Substack newsletter. If I didn't start the Substack newsletter, I probably wouldn't have had the opportunity to secure a blockchain partnership and certification program for young people. It's really again down to the identity, and that's why your identity has to be rooted in who God says you are. Because at different points in time, He might ask you to make a detour, He might ask you to pivot, and even the people that love you the most may not really understand these things. So I've spent so much time on identity, and we still have some few questions to cover, so I'm going to run. But this is a really important topic. That's why I'm taking my time, because if you get your identity right, almost every other thing is going to align. Next, I think this is a question we've answered. All right. So this is just a quote to buttress everything I have said in the past 20 something minutes. You will succeed in your career not by doing what you like, but by playing in the field where you will succeed exceptionally. Right. And it's really saying, God, where is that place I will succeed? And when God shows you, you now take it like it was what you wanted to do your entire life. Right? This is really about identity and submitting to God's will so that you can have dominion in the place He wants you to have dominion. It's not necessarily you just starting something and saying, God bless it. So there are two different things. The next question is, how to be more effective in one's career? And the first response I put here is to be prayerful, because genuinely and sincerely, life is more spiritual than physical. And when people begin to say this thing, it's almost like the older generation or the person saying it with you is trying to be spooky. The person saying it with you, or saying it to you rather, does not really understand ball. That how are you telling me that I need to be spiritual? But as you grow in life and in you realize that life is more spiritual than physical. These days, we even joke about it on social media. We say, we even talk about it on social media. We say, we are becoming like our parents, we are becoming spiritual. So it's not necessarily about whether we're becoming like our parents or becoming spiritual. But the person who made the world knows the world more than you. The person who created you knows you more than anybody or anything. And as much as there are multiple spiritual forces, it will do you better benefits to align with the one who created your career, to align with the one whose thoughts and plans is really to give you a future and a home. Imagine you're in an office and before something happens, you know, because you have a relationship with God. And prayer is not a chore. This still stems back to identity. So building a relationship with God is really about the way you see God, right? And I used to teach and say that the fear of God is the love of God. Imagine your parents. Think about someone you love so much. There are certain things you will not do because you don't want to hurt them. You don't want them to feel bad. So imagine you love God so much, which also deals with identity. How we see God affects the way we choose to love and relate to Him. So imagine you see God the right way, you love God the right way. You will not think about praying to God as a chore. It will just be normal communication. You will not think about it as a religious activity that always has to start with "in Jesus' name." You'll be about your day and you will ask Him, what is on your mind? What should I know? How should I prepare? Let me share a story. I was working in a job some years back and they were going to make certain changes, but they did not tell us. So we were in a program that was supposed to run for 9 months, and abruptly they were going to end it in 6 months and they were going to lay off some people. But I knew by discernment. So I remember having a conversation with someone who was like, you know how you have class rep, somebody like that, that was like a career rep over that cohort. And I said, after today, they're going to send this message. They're going to say this. They're going to say this. They're going to say this. And the person said, in fact, Tolu, your discernment is spot on. You are very true. This. I don't even know how you knew this thing. So you need prayer. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but your spirituality is not necessarily because of what you want, but because of relationship. There are certain opportunities that have come up in because of my career, and people see them on social media and they're like, oh my God, I like this kind of opportunity. But let me tell you, a number of the opportunities that you want in your career will come from relationship. How? Imagine someone that you have a good relationship with, right? Not necessarily high service or hero worship and all of that. You have a good relationship with, something is coming, an opportunity comes up, and they just say, they are gisting you. Why? Because you have a good relationship and you have good communication. So now it becomes easy for them to say, oh, there's this opportunity, there's this thing. How can you? I want you to be a part of it. I think you should be a part of it. You benefit from it. This is how you can position yourself. So your spirituality should not be religious. See, if there's anything you take out of here today, it's really about identity and building a healthy relationship with God. The second one is understand the work culture. When I speak and teach a lot about career, which I have been doing lately a lot for some reason, right? I say that you can have everything educationally and professionally right and still not get hired in an organization. Why? Because of work culture. Some people will say that in an organization, they've noticed that most of the ladies that work there are fair in color. Some will say that most of the people that work here, they have dreads. Most of the people that work here, they have this particular shape. Most of the people that work here, they talk in a certain way. In fact, I don't know why tech bros always behave in a certain way. You also need to understand the work culture, right? Scripture will say, when you're in Caesar, give what is Caesar's to Caesar's, but also biblically, so that you don't do something out of the context. The third one is be professional. Many times we do so many things or some things as young people, and we just want you to fly as levity. You're not speaking the professional language. You're not acting the way you're supposed to act. Then the person that is doing it, you think they are doing too much. And you're wondering why that person, it seems like they are more effective or certain things are working out. And then I'll say, grow in your emotional intelligence. And this is an entire course on itself. Knowing and recognizing your emotion, recognizing the emotions of other people, and choosing to regulate. And one thing I would like to say here, just as I move fast, is responsibility. Responsibility is your ability to respond. And that's really what emotional intelligence is. If I say, you're stupid, for example, right, it hurts you. But emotional intelligence is your ability to respond appropriately to what I said. And sometimes you want to say, okay, I'm a person that gets angry at a particular for 20 minutes. How can I reduce my anger to 15 minutes? How can I reduce it to 5 minutes? How can I get to a point where people say things to me, but I'm not internalizing them, right? This also has to do with identity and some of the personality tests and tests you take in really understanding your identity as well. And then this one, document your work. This one, many people do it a lot, and they would say the faintest pen is sharper than the brightest brain, something of that nature, the quote. But the point is, if you do work, write it down. So you worked in an organization, you led a project, have a drive, have a document in a cloud, write down the things you did, write down the results, and more than that, speak about your work. Oh, I led this, I co-authored this, I supported this, I managed this. Talk about your contribution on the work, not necessarily what everybody did. Talk about the role that you played. This is very important. And also, as we go in the course of the presentation and subsequently, you will also begin to realize that the people that are most visible in offices and in corporate career are not usually the most competent. But many times, the most competent people are not speaking about their work. So please be vocal about what you do. There's a way to be vocal about this, whether it's LinkedIn or social media, but even within the office context, there's a right way to speak about your work. And of course, I would say here, mind your business, focus on your focus. You came here to work. So if there are things that will derail you from your focus, you want to be cautious about them. And I think finally, I would say excellence. And as a point for excellence, what I'm just going to say is many times in doing your job, you would have to do other job to get your job done well. For example, if you are a graphic designer and you're supposed to design an International Women's Day flyer, for example, you cannot just wake up and put one picture of your favorite staff in the organization and create one hashtag and use yellow. For example, my favorite staff is Priscilla and she's wearing yellow. I just put yellow and put Happy International Women's Day. That looks like a birthday post or a political statement. It requires you to do the extra job to say what exactly is International Women's Day. Is there statistics I can put on this quote? What are the colors used to celebrate International Women's Day? Is there a hashtag I need to put on this quote? Do I need to learn how to create cutout images and put the images of the female leaders in the organization? So you've seen that in creating just a simple flyer, I've gone beyond doing the job of creating the flyer to be able to do my job effectively. And this is also something that a lot of young people miss out on. Now, I'm going to move to another question. This one says, seeing is becoming. How can you find the right career environment that influences and advances one career? I've partially answered this one before, right? Go ahead and look for it. If I ask you what your favorite song, food, music, celebrity is, you know, I may not know these things because it's not appealing to me. I may not know these things because I'm not investing in them. But you know because you are investing in them. So start asking the right question in relation to identity. Stay there until you get the right clarity of what God has called or what he has designed. I remember it's a journey. You will never get the whole picture at once, but you will need a certain level or dose of clarity to move forward. The next is research on the industry, for example. So if there's a particular industry or sector, I need to research what are the career paths. Is there, for example, there are certain fields that it has been, there's data to show that most people in these fields do phenomenally well. They have a law background, or they have a STEM background, or they have a mathematics background, even if what they're doing is not related. So you say, okay, first, what is the industry? When you know the industry, you now want to begin to look for key stakeholders. For example, who is the pioneer? Who is the woman? Who is the man? Who is the person that started this thing? So if I want to become, for example, an authority in emotional intelligence, I want to ask myself, under what industry does emotional intelligence fall under primarily? Now, who is the pioneer or who is the person within this place that is a kingmaker that announces other people? Or who is the person that before people become prominent, they must meet this person? Or who is the person that is the most professional expert on this topic? For emotional intelligence, it is Daniel Goleman, and he has a book on that. Now, after that, I will begin to watch their videos, which we like to do. Watch their videos. But beyond watching their video, if you really want to get the wisdom, go and get the book. Go and get the book. As much as there's knowledge available on social media, there's AI, the thing you're looking for, the gold you're looking for is usually in the book because they know you will not buy the book. Now, when you've bought the book, you've read the book, you've consumed their book, what you now want to do is invest in their resources. For example, if they're having a mentorship program, they're having a physical meet and greet, you want to save money, you want to plan for it, and you want to get in the room. Because getting in the room gives you access which you need and sometimes extra credibility. So sometimes you could, and the access and extra credibility also depends on the work you have done based on your identity and these phases before. Like, look for it is basically about identity and staying there, right? So if you've not done the work and all those things, if you step into the room, you will not know what to say. You will not be able to see anything to them. So for example, you cannot come and say, oh, I want this person to mentor me. I want this person to mentor me. And they are telling you that the answer to the question you're looking for is a free article on LinkedIn. You've not read it, but you want them to mentor you. They are busy. Do you know how many other people want them to mentor you, right? It shows that your behavior is not promising. It doesn't seem like you're ready to commit to paying the price to get the price for what you want. So you're probably not ready. And sometimes God can even show you somebody and say, oh, this is a model, this is your mentor and whatnot. But if you're not at a certain level of growth to assess that relationship or that person, it may not open up. And it's also wisdom on your end to say, oh, I recognize that God said this thing, but I need to put in the work. And at the right time, it will happen easily. And like I mentioned also again, for some of us, we will not have a reference point for who we are becoming. And that is okay, because you just have to trust the voice of God. And for some other people, you would not necessarily have a personal mentor or a spiritual leader or an industry, what is it called? An industry godfather or godmother. And you also need to understand it. For some of us, we'll be mentored from a distance. For some of us, it would be from a distance and with God, because he doesn't want to share his glory with people. So your identity is important, because you don't want to claim what is not yours because it feels convenient in any way. So that's the answer to that. Now, this one says, how can I start a career in the social impact sector? And this question is similar to the second question that I'm going to go ahead to answer. So let's see the answer here. The first is to get into an industry, right? The industry. If you want to work in the oil and gas industry, how can you start a career? You cannot start a career if you're not in the career. So you have to get into the industry. And many times, to get into any industry, you need experience to get experience. So volunteering is a good one. Something I've also heard a really phenomenal professional say is, if as a young person you use all your summer vacation to work or intern and you study a 4-year course, by the time you're done with school, you'll be leaving school with at least 2 years or 2.5 years of experience that would give you an advantage and a better head start. Recently, we did a session on CV writing and job tips for core members, which is on the HON NYSC YouTube page. But many times, young people just despise opportunities because the flaws really stem from identity again. So because you're a core member, you don't see how that plays out. If you see my CV, my most comprehensive CV, my experience being a core member, being a teacher, teaching mathematics, physics, further maths to SS 1 to 3 students, it's listed there because I consider it valuable. I don't think this opportunity is too small to be leveraged for something better. So if I want to consult and teach people, I can tell them that I spent time teaching. It's easy for me to talk to you eloquently, right? Because when I was a core member, I learned to become a teacher. I literally became a teacher. But before NYSC, I was super, super impatient. So some of these questions I probably won't even ask you to ask me. I won't answer them. I'm just like, why don't they know what's wrong with them? Or they're supposed to know, those kind of things. So please give yourself to the process. And sometimes the process is not necessarily, like I mentioned earlier, directly tied to your purpose, but it is directly tied to becoming so that you can achieve the purpose at the end. So please get into the industry, volunteer, get a job when necessary. The second one is build competence. Now, before I leave get a job, let me say something. There's always a conversation around passion and purpose, and that's a different conversation for another day. But what I'm going to say is, how much do you want a job? Many times we are trying to build our career around comfort, and good things do not always come easy. When I finished serving, I remember having to make 2 trips to a different state and spending more than 8 hours on the road because I was trying to get a job as an intern in a particular organization that has played a significant role in my career. Our parents, for example, you will hear them say, oh, after this, they moved to particular state, particular country, particular whatever. They built their lives around their careers, around their works. There's a way to balance. But if you really want a job, you have to be a lot more proactive. God forbid, if someone just finished school, they're coming back, and something bad happened, right? In misfortune, their parents die, they have 4 siblings that need to go to school. There are some questions that they will not ask. Sometimes they'll just go on the road and they'll be like, okay, this person that is sweeping or this person that is doing this, how can I help? I'm sure you've seen those kind of people. They are very dogged. They are looking for where their next meal is coming from. It's not necessarily because they don't want to apply for a 9 to 5 or get a job that comes with HMO. But desperate times calls for desperate measures, right? And like I mentioned earlier, whatever you do, it has to be done in the context of God's will and his value. So you're not cheating people or being wicked to people or looking down on people because you want to get something. So get into the industry, volunteer, get a job, right? I spent a significant part of my career volunteering. I did. I volunteered from my 100 level to my 400 level. I volunteered after service here for about 2 years. And there's still organizations that I volunteer with, my own personal commitment, my own personal choice to give back, even though I have other paid things that I do as well. The second one is build competence, right? When you're competent, you're going to see the quote shortly and I'll explain that. When you're competent, people see your competence before they see their bias. But what competence means is become so good at this thing that you cannot be ignored. Become so good at this thing that you cannot be ignored. I remember seeing a post on LinkedIn some years back where a guy applied for an opportunity, did not get it, applied again, and he was like, oh, the reason you're not getting your opportunities because you've not grow. And I was very triggered. If you've subscribed to Grow the Oracle mailing list and you've read the welcome letter, you will know the story I'm talking about. I was very triggered because I also applied for the same opportunity. I had not gotten it. I had I still do. I have a drive of opportunities, cover letters, CVs, things I applied for as far back as 2022, 2021, 2020, 2019 that I got rejected for. I have videos of those things. So when I'm going back to apply again, for me, it's like, how have I grown? How has my status changed? What am I doing differently? And what am I doing to improve my status or my chance? So in building competence, it means many things, right? But when you read the welcome webinar, you would understand what growth means and how you can build competence, or the 5 steps that really apply to you. The third one is document your growth and impact. Now, what I want to say here is please document, but do not overshare. I don't need to come and I have videos, pictures of my career journey as way back as 2017. If I want to make a 1 hour long documentary video, I can, of my career, or a 2 hour long documentary video of my career, I can. But I don't necessarily need to do something to prove a point to people because of social media. So when you're sharing on social media or sharing with anybody, you want to ask yourself, why am I doing this? What's the purpose of this thing? Is the purpose around people pleasing or just getting validated? Is this serving a good purpose? If I share this thing today, by next week, Monday, will I regret that I shared this thing? If I share this thing this way, am I building sustainability, or am I just building virality that dies out? So these are questions you want to ask yourself. Documenting your growth and impact is first documenting it internally before choosing to share externally. I remember when I graduated from university, that was when I started writing about the impact of the projects I had worked on. I think I wrote like a 6-part article series that those still in the team are currently making reference to now, and they're still commenting and saying, wow, this is so practical. It's good to see what the other generation did, what this team did, and how we can restore the team to its former glory. So please write intellectually. And writing intellectually means you will have to sit with your thoughts, you would have to introspect, and you would have to post at the right time. There are some things you would write and you're not supposed to post them now. There's some things you write and like, oh my God, I just want to go viral. And that thing is supposed to be a book. Because it came as one article, as one carousel, does not mean that it has to be viral now. It has to be a book. You don't want to put all your valuable resources out at one time because you're trying to prove a point, you're trying to be viral, you're trying to create on social media. You can create and not overshare your personal life, right? So this is also important. And this one here, your why will change over time. Why you start is not necessarily why you will continue. Why you continue is not necessarily why you must succeed. Why you must succeed, I like to say, is your finishing why. Is why you stay true to the end. I entered the social impact sector personally because I was depressed. I found community, I found love, I found people that were just nice and beautiful to me. I continued in the social impact space because I realized that there was money. It's a long story, but I realized there was money. And the reason I am still here is because I think change is possible. I've seen things happen in the past 9 years that makes me realize that if these things have happened this much, if Satan has fought this much, then change is possible. And I'm going to stay true to see the change happen. So your why has to be strong, right? And remember, your why is also tied to your identity. So at the end of the day, it's not necessarily about if 5 people like your post or don't like your post, right? And then This is also really important because this is why you see that at certain seasons people pop up, and when you want to say they just appeared from nowhere, they're just lucky. No, you realize they've done the groundwork. So know when it is time to leave or when it is time to pivot, and regardless of what it is, ensure you live well. There's a way to leave a place, and at another session maybe we'll spend time to speak about that. This one, like I said, is similar to the previous question. I need a clear roadmap for public policy and administration. So start really speak to God about it, because as much as public policy is similar to social impact, your identity and your why has to be strong. Are you doing it because there's money and whatnot? Now let me say something. God is not always going to tell you everything you're going to do that will succeed. God is not going to tell you to do them. There's some things you're going to do that you will succeed at, that will come from a pure place. And if you've paid attention to your life and the lives of people, you begin to realize that some of the most silent prayers you whisper to God are some of the biggest prayers that have answers. That moment where you're stranded and you're like, God, please let this thing work. God, please, I don't want this thing to happen tomorrow. God, please just surprise me this week. God, I want to see a butterfly. God, are you here? I want to see my favorite flower or something, right? So really clarity, direction. Sometimes it's really just, God, I'm frustrated by this system and I'm tired of seeing the system this way. So I'm going to do something. And because God has found a willing vessel, he now decides to partner with you. So even when you choose to start your initiative without God said, seeing a vision, hearing a word, falling on the ground, rolling in the gutter, you need to ensure that when he comes to partner with you, you're sensitive enough to partner. My career was not by mistake. In 2017, a lot of changes and pivots happened globally. In 2017, a number of people came into the development space. So just pay attention and say, oh, how many people are celebrating so and so years in the development space? 9 years. We are not, it's not one person. There was like a clarion call. Me, I did not hear clarion call. Me, I was just depressed. I saw community, I joined community, right? But I learned to partner with God along my journey. Even within that, between 2017 and 2021 and 2022, there was a shift. There was a drastic shift in young women and young people who came into the development space, and they suddenly became global. People not qualifying for opportunities, having certain opportunities created, having certain offices created for them to sit there. And those people also started their career or had really significant moments in their career in 2017. This is why you have to document, because as you document, you begin to notice patterns that are peculiar to you. Maybe before a breakthrough happens in your career, there's this thing that always happens. Maybe when Satan wants to distract you in your career, this is what he does, or this is who he uses. So really asking God and getting clarity and identity is really important. As a general tip, apply it to both questions. Understand the current industry. You cannot succeed in an industry if you don't understand the industry and how it works. Next, follow industry trends. And this is beyond social media and TikToks. What journals are you reading? What journals are you subscribed to? And what resources are you using to stay current? You don't like the news because it's always bad things that is there. Great. But you need to listen to the news, right? If you're in certain industries and if you want to do well. So how are you growing in your emotional intelligence and filtering so that you can get the information that you need to dominate in your career without being overwhelmed by the darkness that is going on around there? And the final one is build for the future, not now. In the past 3 to 5 years, there has been a pandemic of young people coming into the development space. And it's not necessarily because they are passionate, it's because they want fully funded opportunity. And it's because we've created a status as a society that if you travel to one country, it means you're global. I remember, I've seen some things anyway. I remember I saw someone, right, got an opportunity to travel, and it was almost like their post. You know, this thing with the way we try to spite people that because I've traveled, you've not traveled, I'm global, you're not global. In fact, I just did this thing and this happened. Sometimes we're just silly that we fail to recognize the favor of God. And few months, it's not even long, few months after the trip, the same person is like, it's so hard to get money in this place, things are not working out. And I'm like, what's going on here? So please build for the future, not now, right? Be humble, extend grace, even in the way you celebrate, the words you use. There's no point to create content because you want to tension people or with a tone of fear of missing out. If I do that, I'll have more followers. If I do that, my post will become viral faster. But you don't have to do it. Let me tell you something. God does not require you to do anything illegal or unlawful or to pull people down to climb up. You do not need to do it at all. There's enough space for all of us to dominate, man and woman. And It might be hard if you've not really had a personal example for that, but that's what he says in his word. And that's something you should hold on to shape your identity. Because other people are doing the wrong thing and it's working for them, does not necessarily mean you should do it. Personally, if people are doing the wrong thing and I step in there, I've not done it too. If I start thinking about doing it, they will catch all of us. So that's how my own luck works. But whether your luck works like that or not, please grow to a point where you're able to abstain from those things and build for the future, not now. What does that mean? It means that God really knows where you're going to succeed and where you're going to excel. It means that some of the things that God will tell you to do is really not about now, it's for the future. So you want to make those investments. It's like Noah. Imagine God telling Noah to build an ark, and Noah is telling them rain is going to fall. Imagine telling people who have never seen rain before that rain is going to fall. They'll look at you like, what are you saying? And this is how changes happen. Many times when changes are about to happen in industries and sectors, people begin to talk about them. And for some reason, Christians and the church lose out, because almost every change that comes, we say is the mark of the beast, right? That's what we call it. We call it the Antichrist. So by the time we come into the sector to use those tools, we are already behind. We've lost first movers advantage. First movers advantage is about the person who starts first gets the highest market share. So they may not be the most perfect, but because they are willing to take the risks and improve over time, they get the highest market share. So please, in the economy that God is building for your career, build for the future, not now. Build for sustainability, not for virality, right? Sometimes he will put you on a 10-year journey, 15, 20 years, or even how long, right? How long it requires for you to grow, for you to become. Sometimes we're the ones who elongate our journey, true. But please stay true to process, and by God's grace, you will learn to stop repeating classes if you're repeating classes. This is another beautiful question. How do women cope in predominantly male-owned and male-led organization? So I think this one is a lot more. How do you navigate career-related dynamics and politics when you're working in a predominantly male-dominated office? Well, men are not your competition. The rise of women is not the fall of men. The rise of men should not be the fall of women. God created both of us to have dominion in our workplace. The first thing I'm going to say is do your work, focus on your work. That's why you're there. The second one I'm going to say is please set healthy boundaries. You want to be cautious not to become a man's mother. By man, I mean male. A man's mother, a man's wife, a man's cleaner, a man's maid. So setting really healthy boundaries is really, really important. I remember an event I went for a few years ago. I was also a panelist recently, actually. And one of the older men on the table was telling me that something was dirty. I should come and clean it up. And I had to just say, oh, thank you, sir, and properly redirect. Every single time he called me to do something that was outside the scope of why I was redirecting to the person who needed to handle this. So set healthy boundaries. And sometimes this really has to do with communication and agreement. Let me say something. Some of the problems that some of us are facing in our workplaces, they will change on two grounds. One, at a point in time, you would have to leave the office. However, in leaving the office, the prerequisites that you set before you started that office is something you would have to correct in your next office. What does that mean? It means that first impression matters. It means that first impression is important. It means that the way I show up first to you has a lasting effect on the way you predict me. There are people that I have showed up to at a different point in my life when I was younger in a certain way. And even if I may have answers to some of their problems, they may not want to associate with me because of a certain impression that I stuck with them, right? And it may, and most times it will take a while for that change to be undone. And that is also a problem that women face in career. So I'm going to also speak on that. But please set healthy work boundaries. If you're supposed to close at this particular time, let it be clear. And sometimes healthy work boundaries mean ensuring that there is written statement and written policy for what you do. If you're supposed to start at a particular time, close at a particular time, this is the terms and agreements you're agreeing to. Please ensure it is written down. Please don't work in an establishment where the things that should be written down are not written down. Your salary should be written down in a document that is given to you and signed by both stakeholders. Even when I sign MOUs with people, I'm always keen on getting the copy signed by them and not just blindly believing that because we agreed I'm going to get a copy, and the copy I'm going to get is going to be the exact copy that is needed to be shared or sent to me. The next one here is speak up and own your contributions. So if you have to become confident in yourself, right? And becoming confident is by becoming confident. It's really about being comfortable making mistakes and extending grace to yourself. I'm someone that used to be so critical about myself. I'll make a mistake and I'll beat myself up for about 3 weeks, 3 months, 1 year. How could I have said something stupid? But you just need to realize that sometimes we all make mistakes at different points in time. But again, like responsibility, your ability to respond, your ability to handle the situation, what you choose to do about the mistake you've made is more important than the mistake in itself at certain points in time. So please speak up and own your contribution. Don't if you say something at work and a man tries to own it like it's his contribution, please speak up and own your contribution. You can reiterate and provide more clarity on what you said. Don't be like, oh, I don't want to do too much. I'm laughing because there are images and pictures in my head about this, right? Don't be fake humble when you should be vocal, really. Be firm, be firm. And I know sometimes we do this as female where you try to use a soft voice. Sometimes we try to be manipulative, right? Try to use a soft voice because you want to, or you try to use a soft voice when you want to get certain benefits. Oh, excuse me, thank you. And then when it comes to negotiating, it becomes hard. So be firm, right? People, if you're too soft or you're soft, there are people that will like you for it, there are people that will not like you for it. Remember, your identity is about seeing yourself as God sees you and pleasing God, not pleasing man. So regardless of what you do, there are people that will not like you. There are people that don't like me because I'm doing this thing and I'm doing it for women and I'm not doing it for men, right? So they are just different things. Your identity has to be really, really stable and secure in God. So speak up and own your contributions. Be firm. Negotiate clearly. Negotiate early. This one happens a lot in salary. I remember a very close friend of mine getting a job, and I remember telling her that that money was so small. And she was telling me that, oh, something happened. And something happened with her academics, but that has been fixed. But as a result of the setback she had with her academics a while ago, before getting this job, it affected her identity so much that she stuck to the money. Now she began working at the job, and the roles and responsibilities kept increasing. It became harder. It became difficult. She was sick. She still had to show up to work. She was literally working every day. Now, when she wanted to resign, guess what? They got two people to handle the job that only her was doing. And each of those people that they paid them more than they paid her. So please negotiate clearly, negotiate early, right? Of course, there are steps and all of that, but you can go ahead and put in the work ahead of when we're going to speak on some of these things in detail. The point is, do not compromise. I've not seen any artisan, any man that you say, oh, come and do this, come and do that. Even if you call a good price for a man, the man is still going to call a higher price. Like, have you thought about, like, oh, I'm going to pay this man this money for doing this thing, for providing this service? And you think you're paying him well in your mind, and you ask him, how much do you want? And he calls like times 7 of what was in your mind. And you're like, eh? That's how men think. So please stop putting yourself under. Stop this fake, this fake humility that is making you do the work and suffer because you're not negotiating clearly, right? Build strategic alliances. I remember doing an interview about 2 or 3 years ago for a paper, and one of the questions I was asked is, how have you thrived in a male-dominated field? And for the first time, it made me introspect and really realize, yes, I have a STEM background. I have been a STEM professional. I had done a lot of publishing about that year around energy transition and energy related systems, and even in the climate space. And one of the things I said was really around networks and competence. Let me tell you, regardless of how flawed a system is, competence is still required. If you even look at the war, right, the war that is going on in Iran, you see that even almost every single time that a leader is killed, another leader has to be selected that is competent enough, even though they are killing them like back to back. So I want you to know that in dominating, there will always be space for you if you're competent. It requires competence for a system to be sustained. So please don't shrink on competence. One. Two, strategic alliance. So as a result of competence, there were situations where a project was happening and a male partner or a male lead would say, to me, offline, not necessarily in the main meeting. Oh, Tolu, there's this project coming up. I want to put you on this project. Can you commit this time to do this thing? I said yes. Oh, Tolu, this project is coming on. I want to put you on this project. It's for so and so months. You're going to take lead on the project and just give me feedback on, can you take lead on this project? And yes, so building strategic alliances is really, really important because, like I spoke about, growing the Oracle Bethel and community, you're going to need men and people. By men, it's not literally male, but men, women, mankind, right? Community to grow forward. And also, one thing I'm going to say here is beware of the glass cliff. What is a glass cliff? A glass cliff is a situation where there's problem in an office, there's problem in a workplace. And when there's problem, that's when they suddenly promote a woman, right? And it's literally a glass cliff because it's like, yeah, if you solve the problem, cool. If you don't solve the problem, then you can fall from the cliff, or the glass can break and the person just falls through. So please be very cautious. This is where prayer and spirituality discernment comes in, because sometimes you would be in a glass cliff situation and you have to say no. And sometimes you'll be very aware that this thing is a glass cliff situation. It is created for my downfall, but I'm going to take it and I'm going to succeed at it, right? So that discernment is super, super important. Okay, this one. This is also a question. So, is there a special platform where I can speak to psychologists or aspiring psychologists? I mean, a platform where we can relate with one another, share opportunities and experiences. And this is my answer. My answer is find and join the professional network. So even in building a community, I cannot answer all the questions for you. There are more than 100 occupations, professions, careers, jobs, and there will be more. But if you're looking to create with like minds, then look for the community where like minds are and join. There's probably a fellowship program, an associate program, a certification program that most people who are psychologists right? You know that your parents have the money to pay for ICANN in your 100 level. You know you're ready to read and put the discipline to get the work. Please get it in your 100 level. Don't say, oh, most people get it in their final year, so I'm going to wait to my final year. That's you not using your advantage to your advantage, right? And cheating yourself. So at the opportunities where you have your advantage and you can use them in a way that does not hurt others and is not a sin, please go ahead and use those advantages that God has given you. This one says, how do you deal with people in the community who are not of the same level to you? And I think this is also a problem that, or a question or something that most women struggle with. But the first thing really is identity, right? And identity, like I mentioned, is really seeing yourself as God sees you, right? And in speaking about identity, the next thing is honor. Honor is about seeing people as God sees them. So if I see someone, they may not be at their full potential. But if I have a relationship with God and God tells me this is who this person is going to become, I begin to associate respect, and I begin to associate weight to them based on who they will become and who God says they are, not based on who they are. So you also begin to notice over time that, teachers, mentors, people who see other young people doing the wrong thing and they honor them, they call out the good in them, they tell them they are better than this, they tell them I trust you, they tell them I believe in your ability. In honoring them, in seeing them as God sees them, and in calling out their identity, those people begin to align to their God-given identity. So it's really about honor, because if I honor people, then whether I'm dealing with a young person or an old person, I'm not going to deal with them based on their age. I'm not going to deal with them based on their status. I'm not going to deal with them based on the quality of their week. I'm not going to judge them based on whether they made their nails or did not make their nails. This requires a lot of work, right? But I think just starting this and still tying it down to identity is one. Second thing I'm going to say is respect, right? So there are people that God says we should give double honor to, and I think of respect as double honor. So if you now begin to see someone based on their God-given identity, they are older than you, you admire something that you want in them. Now, when you honor them times two, because this is you choosing to associate that weight to them and to who they are. Then the next one is please be professional. So if you want to build healthy relationships, please be professional. And more than being professional, tell God to help you against familiarity, right? A mistake that we make a lot in ruining relationships is familiarity. And if you begin to look at your life and you notice that over time you've had good relationships, you've had great relationships, but you've ruined these relationships based on familiarity. Maybe they invited you to their house and you're like, so these people, they don't even used to flush their toilets like that. You're like, how can this person have those? First, please remove people from a pedestal, right? Right, remove people from a pedestal. And if you genuinely honor people, you genuinely see people as God sees them, you would not be putting people on an unnecessary pedestal. You would be professional because it still ties back to identity and honor. So please be cautious of this one. So even when someone is joking with you or says something, you can choose to have internal values, right? There are certain people, I would say Mark or Satu. And I was even having a conversation with one of my siblings. I was saying I was unhappy about something, but I'm like, I really want to call this person Mark. I really want to call this person Sir. It's my internal policy or it's my personal policy not to use first name for certain people. So please be professional, have personal values. Again, if you don't stand for something, you will fall for everything. And then be cordial, be friendly, be respectful. You can also learn love languages. Find out when it's the birthdays of certain people that you admire and support them. There are mentors, there are people I admire. If they launch a book, if they do something, I show up, right? I buy, I donate. It does not necessarily mean that, oh, I need the book now or whatnot, but it's really about building healthy communities, about showing up for people when they need you and when they don't even need you. Sometimes you reap what you sow, not what you sow. So because I show up for other people, does not necessarily mean that those exact people will show up for me, right? And also understanding cadres and relationship is important. But I think in summarizing this, what I would say is if you perceive someone the right way, which is really about honoring them based on their God-given identity and who God says you are, the next thing is you really need to handle the relationship the right way. So you can perceive someone the right way and not receive from the relationship the right way and manage the relationship the wrong way. So relationship networking, all of that, they are separate classes and they are really in depth. I'm trying to move because of time. We've spent much time than I hoped, but I hope you're really gaining value. So the summary of the quotes to answer some of the questions I just really spent time explaining is when you're competent, people see your competence before they see their bias. But when you're incompetent, people see their bias and use it as an excuse to justify your incompetence. What does it mean? It means that, excuse me, you're a woman, you're a young person, right? When you're competent, people see you as the professional, right? Because that is the competence you're showing before they see that you are a woman doing whatever. But when you're incompetent, people now see that you're a woman and they will not say, it's even a woman lawyer, it's even a woman doctor. Do you understand? They're not beginning to use the bias that they have against you to justify the level of incompetence that you are showing. So as often as you can, please be competent. Show up in your as your best possible self. Put in the work. Put in the work. Sometimes the things you're hoping for or the breakthrough you're coming for or you're waiting for, it would not come where and when you expect it to come from, right? But you just have to put in the work and be ready. I think it should be our final question. What are some of the impacts of today's technology on female careers? So it depends on how you're looking at it, but today I choose to focus on the good. Technology has provided better opportunities and more opportunities for women. Technology has provided better networking opportunities, like we are here having this beautiful conversation. Imagine I had to carry a flyer, a handbill, microphone, shouting at the top of my voice, speaking. More than half of us will not even be here, right? Because we're probably not in the same location, right? Technology has also provided increased education and also better compensation benefits. And something I'm also going to say about this at a later time, we might and we should look at this is when it comes to compensation, please try to be vocal. What do I mean? If you are recruited with 7 people at the same time on an associate role, have the conversation. Oh, okay, they send our letters today. What are they paying you? What are they paying you? What are they paying you? Especially when you're all starting together, right? And then based on your competence level and your experience level, you can choose to negotiate. But when you choose to keep quiet about compensation and benefits, people will cheat you. Imagine like my close friend and the story I shared. The reason she knew she was cheated was because she had conversations with people who were close to her and who meant well for her. So in saying, oh, this is what these people are offering, and I think is a good offer, telling her, no, there are better offers, oh, there are better offers. This is also what technology has done for women, because it allows for more communication, which allows us to know when we are being cheated and how we can speak up. And of course, increase safety. Yeah, a lot has happened, and even on social media, a lot is happening. But with technology, we can advocate better, we can do more. So I think when we think about technology and the tools that man is creating, by man I mean mankind in this context is creating, we should think about how we can use them to dominate, right? There are a few negative impacts as well, but I think the positive impacts are more than the negative impacts. Imagine there was no technology, how would we know what's happening to the women in Afghanistan, right? And so many other things happening around the world. So the impact has really been positive for women. It has been positive for women. Okay. This is a final one, I guess. Let's check. Yes, that's the final question. All right, before I answer this question, please let me know how we're doing. Let me know how it has been. Let me know if what we are saying is making sense, or let me know how has it been for you so far? How has it been? You can write in the chat. Okay, great. So let's wrap up so that we can. I think I'm going to have to move our open mic to the end, just so that everything I need to see I can see, and then we can have final interactions. So this question is a very important question, and I left it to you this time because there are some things I want to share here. And the good thing is, based on the flow we've had in answering the other questions, we've answered some things, so I don't have to spend so much time here. This question says, how do you manage a boss that is emotionally manipulative and sees you as a tool instead of a colleague? Another question says, how do you deal with tough and hard to please bosses, and touch on switching careers? So I'm hoping that the people who ask these questions are here, so that during the open mic session, we can interact more and you can provide more context, right? Because when you say tough bosses, there are many things. It could be sexual harassment, it could be delay in paying money, it could be saying one thing and doing another thing, it could be bombarding you with unrealistic workload, it could be making you work late. So there are a lot of nuances involved, but having the right context really helps. So this is what I was trying to say the other time. First is around the terms and conditions. The terms and conditions that you agree to, and how you enter the organization and show up in the organization, your first impression, it matters a lot, right? So for some of us, we have become too friendly and too jovial that, excuse me, it's hard to stand on business where it matters the most. So as you begin to learn and unlearn these things, better opportunities would open up, maybe somewhere else or in a new department. And it's important that as these opportunities open up, you don't make the mistake that you made in the previous level. So that's why I started with terms and conditions. The second one is heal, genuinely heal. And the thing about healing is, when you try to heal, or when you choose to go on a journey of healing from whatever you have gone through that affects your work or your behavior at work, it touches every aspect of your life. So you don't wake up and say, I want to heal my identity, and your family bias or the way you see your family remains flawed, it will touch every area. You cannot choose to heal one part and leave the other part, because our lives and aspects of our lives are interconnected. Let me share an example, very practical example, why it's important to heal. I remember a job I worked at some years ago. Some things happened during one of the rotations. So rotation means you're working in different departments in different locations across Nigeria. So we're traveling indoors. So a lot of things happened, and there was an experience where something triggered something in me that was linked to my childhood, and I didn't know exactly what that was. And I started a work in a new department. I prepared early, waited for people, and suddenly they got to the office before me. Like the people I prepared, I was ready 1 hour before these people, and they got to the office before me. And I came in, and it was like, you showed up late at work, and so many things just happened that day. And someone said something in the room that there are lots of things in our lives that require healing. And I also want you to know that healing is a journey, not a destination. And in choosing to heal, there are lots of things you will have to forgive repeatedly. Repeatedly. Forgiveness is choosing to let go every single time you remember the incident. So because the person said sorry and it has passed, does not necessarily mean that you've forgiven or you've not dealt with that particular incident. And sometimes our own thought patterns, right? There's a vicious circle. Uh, I don't remember exactly how it is, or it's more like your thought patterns or your experiences shape your thought patterns. Your thought patterns shape your beliefs shape your behavior. So imagine like having one bad experience, and that experience sticks so much that it becomes the way someone sees themselves, like this is how this person's life is always going to be, and that's a lie from Satan. So like I mentioned, investing in healing is a lot, and I would also share a little on this as we move on. And then also when it comes to work, please become so good that you cannot be ignored, right? If it's a thing around competence, becoming so good that you cannot be ignored is important. And then also really dealing with identity and related issues, also really really important. So as a tip for this, I would say, if you're working in a place or an organization where you are often micromanaged, your boss wants to know what everybody's doing, your boss is always maybe watching you on camera, or wants to see when you are eating, wants to know when you went to the toilet. You're in the toilet, your boss is texting you and telling you you went to the toilet. You went to the toilet 2 minutes ago. Why are you not on your seat? Right? That's micromanaging. And it can be very toxic. Trying to share my screen again. So micromanaging can be very toxic, but if it comes to micromanaging regarding a task, really understanding yourself makes it easier. For example, I'm someone that does not like to micromanage. I plan well. I like to think I do. I plan well. I can handle things from start to finish without necessarily talking to you every day on what needs to be done. I'm a very proactive person. So if it's micromanagement about reporting, then you have to communicate more. But if it's micromanagement about when you sit, where you sit, who talks to you, who doesn't talk to you, then it's becoming toxic. And many times it would lead to you leaving and might lead to you leaving. Also, one thing I'll say is communicate clearly and via official channels. I remember working for someone and on they tried to make it a habit to was it but they tried to make it a habit to communicate with me on weekends. And I put boundaries in place by avoiding their messages and not replying until work day, because that was my own way of putting boundaries. They'll deliberately text me as at when I want to sleep or when I'm hanging out with my family or when I'm in church to do something that was not an emergency, right? And then one day after that went on for a while, I remember the conversation about me becoming more than a colleague. I don't remember the word they used, but I just decided to pretend to be ignorant. And what I said is, I would like to keep this relationship as professional as possible. I've also had professional communications with people on maybe LinkedIn, and it's very professional. And it's like, oh, the moment they have my WhatsApp number, it's like, dear baby, I don't indulge and say thank you, so nice. So please let your boundaries be clear, let your boundaries be respectful. I would like to keep this as professional as possible, right? So that is that. And most importantly, regardless of what it is, close the door gently. I remember also working for someone who at some point it just became really toxic genuinely. And I needed to leave, but for the day I wanted to leave, there was so much tension. So I was not necessarily the one at fault, but I apologized, worked for a while, planned my exit, sent in my letter, told them I was leaving. And they still found a way to cheat me and hold part of my money till today. Not necessarily that they could not pay, but they just choose not to pay, right? So, yes, sometimes that happens as well. But I think these are some steps to help. And during the open mic, if there are more practical or more practicalities in relation to this about managing manipulative bosses or staffs, we'll talk about them. I've also had a colleague that hardly did the work and was would hardly do the work, would make mistake and would try to blame me for the mistake. Or I would do something and say, I did this. I would do work for the team. And it was clear that it was not everybody that did this thing. There was one person that was exceptionally good at this thing that did this thing. And for every time I tried to speak up, she tried to make it feel like, why am I speaking up? Why am I being selfish? And me, I was dealing with identity issues. So I'll go and cry, 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 cry. My colleague go. But yes, that's why healing is a journey, right? There are a lot of things that identity, healing, and honor will solve, as well as spirituality. And then when it comes to leaving careers, what I'm going to say is, when it's time to leave, you will know, and your why has to be strong. This is the question I get asked once in a while, and you can leave and close the door gently. Now, speaking about patterns, there was a point in my life where I noticed that for most of the communities and places I was living, it's like I was living with conflict and friction. If you read my book about NYSC, you will have context, right? Did everything right. My PPA was going well, achieved a lot during service year. My final clearance, I ended up getting a query. That's a long story. You have to get a book to know what happened. Then after that, I got another job and it was like almost time to leave. Something else happened. And then after that, I worked with another toxic person that it was like, excuse me, time to leave, something else happened. So I would say recognizing patterns is important and dealing with these things spiritually. I remember a job I had to properly resign from. But if I'm being honest with you, for that job, as much as I knew it was time to leave, I had to leave in the spirit before I left physically. So imagine planning your resignation and you've not mentioned it to anybody, but you just keep having dreams that they rejected your resignation, they refuse to allow you go, they refuse to collect the money. That's why I say life is more spiritual than physical. So I had to pray through until I got a breakthrough. I was like, yes, this thing was approved, this thing happened. And when I actually even tried to leave, it wasn't as straightforward. There were still negotiations on you can stay, you can stay. And I was like, no, there's nothing making me stay, not money, not better, whatever. I am leaving, right? So what I would say about leaving is when it is time to leave, you would move, but you don't want to make a temporary decision, or you don't want to make a temporary life-changing decision based on a temporary situation, right? You don't want to do that. So there are times where you feel tension or you feel unease and you feel uncomfortable, excuse me, and you have to be able to grow to a point where you're able to discern and say, this is how I feel, but this is not what God wants for me. What I feel and what God wants are two different things, and right now they are not aligned, which is why as you grow in your spirituality, it becomes easier, it becomes clearer to make those decisions. And regardless of how bad or how toxic the person is, there's wisdom to close the door gently. It is possible, it is doable. All right, so thank you so much for listening. We're going to come back to open mic, but before we do, let me speak on immediate next steps. So we've spoken a lot about healing, self-awareness, and I want to introduce you to the One NYSC mentorship program. There are four of them. The first one is for the first 3 months. The second one is the Arise, which is the next 4 months, and Advance, which is the last 4 months. And then we have Thrive, which is 12 years long. This particular one, Awake, really focuses on self awareness, healing, emotional intelligence, identity, spirituality during service year and beyond, and also the 1 year framework, how to make every year the year that changes your life, how to hear from God, how to plan properly, how to make the right decision, how to get the right job, and all those kind of things. And the beautiful thing is, you don't necessarily have to be a core member to sign up for it. So if you've listened to everything I've said today and you're like, wow, 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 definitely I need to do a lot of work on identity, or I need to learn a lot to really understand these things, then I would strongly encourage, if you're in a situation where it's a lot more identity focused, you can get the Awake mentorship. I think it's about 15,000 for Awake. And then if you can, I would suggest you get this one instead, the Thrive mentorship. The Thrive mentorship focuses on everything, and it's 12 years. It's 12, it's 12 years. It's 12 months long, right? For each of them, after every 3 months, you have a live session with question and answer. So I hope also that for people that have asked me some questions like, how do you know what's career, what skill, you can now see why I cannot answer those questions in one word, because it's very nuanced. I can't tell you that this is the most selling skill, because it's the most selling skill does not necessarily mean that that's what God wants for you. And like we did earlier, we've officially launched the GWDO Oracle Bethel community for young women, and many more exciting things will come. Later this year, we're going to have a short webinar series, which is going to be more than a day long, right? I didn't think we were going to stay this long, but thank you for your patience. Which is going to be more than a day, maybe 3 days minimum. And it's going to focus on undergraduate students as the target audience. But one thing that we are really going to deal with is identity. So even after you join the mentorship, if you feel like, yes, I think there are some questions I would like answered live, there are some interactions I really want to be in the room, then please, when the flyer is out, kindly do not hesitate to register. Also, if you are an undergraduate or you have access to undergraduate communities, maybe student representative council, student union, or female related groups in schools, undergraduate communities, high schools that we can partner with to ensure that they hear and they also show up, please do not hesitate to reach out. Send me a message, a DM, an email, and I'll be happy to have that conversation with you. Next, I want to share about is Yoma. So Yoma World is an opportunity marketplace, you can see, by UNICEF. And for this one, it's just an action, a call to action to please sign up, so that when the partners of Yoma and Generation Unlimited put opportunities, you are aware of those opportunities and you can benefit from them. I'll share the link to this in the group. And please, if you do sign up on Yoma, kindly send me your email address so I can follow up for the verification process. It doesn't take time to sign up. Excuse me. It literally takes less than 2 minutes to sign up on Yoma. And I think my final call for action this evening is to please join the bigger community, the bigger GWDO Oracle community. You can subscribe to the mailing list on Substack. We announced this beautiful program way earlier before we shared on social media. And you can also pay attention to our main stack and follow us on Instagram, so that for other things that will come up, whether it is female related or for youth leaders in the development space, or in any other thing that we choose to do, or other partnerships that show you benefit and you do not lose out. So thank you very much for listening, for showing up, for asking, for choosing to invest in your professional development, and for trusting me with your time. At this juncture, we are going to move to the open house. So if you have other questions, other comments, I think for now we're just going to start with things that stood out to you. So please let me know what stood out to you in the chat. Thank you.